So picking up from yesterday, completed at 74a, so I'm just starting off again from there with Socrates. So take notice then, is it not also the case that on the one hand, according to all these cases, the recollection can correspond to things that are of a like nature, and on the other hand, the recollection can also correspond to things that are of an unlike nature? So just to recap, this was the difference between, let's say you have a painting of an apple and you have a real apple. And so if you saw this, you may be reminded of this, and so that then you have a recollection of the real thing. And here the objects are alike. But you could also have the situation where you have, as we did yesterday, we had the lyre or harp or whatever you want to call it, which is usually played by a particular person. And in this case, you see the lyre. The lyre reminds you of the player, and then you have a recollection. And in this case, the two are unlike. So that's what's been said there. It corresponds in this way also, said Simmias, Socrates. But when one recollects anything that indeed results from those that are like, is it not necessarily the case that one must accordingly experience the following, that one either bear in mind that the likeness in some way falls short in relation to this recollection, or else that the likeness does not in any way fall short of that which it recollects? Right, so let's go through that. Bear in mind that the likeness in some way falls short in relation to this recollection. So here we're recollecting the real apple. So this is picture of apple. And this is actual apple. And here you've seen the picture and you remember the actual apple. And it's saying that this recollection, the likeness in some way falls short in relation to this recollection. The likeness. Right, this is not the same exactly as this. This is just a picture. So the likeness falls short of the actual apple, the apple that you're recollecting. Yes. They're alike, but they are not the same. So there's a gap here between these two. And the recollection is how you're remembering this actual apple. I think that's what it means there. Maybe I'll put here, fall short. because there is a difference in the alikeness. Right, Simmias, necessarily. Socrates, consider then, if this has to be in this way, we say that somewhere there is something that is equal. I do not mean a stick equal to a stick, nor a stone to stone, nor anything of that kind at all, but something other that is beyond all these, the self-equal, to auto ison, beyond all these, that is equal. Shall we say that this something exists or does not exist at all? Equal to what? We say that somewhere there is something that is equal, ison. I do not mean a stick equal to a stick, nor a stone to a stone. Something other that is beyond all these. Well, let's make two objects. Something equal. Simmias, we shall most certainly say so, by Zeus, and in a most wonderful way indeed. Socrates, or do we also know that which self is? I think there another way of putting that, do we also know what it is? Simmias, by all means we do. Socrates, where have we acquired the knowledge of this? Is it not accordingly from the things which we mentioned just now, from either seeing sticks or stones, or some other things that are equal? From these we envisage that which is other than these. Or does it come to light other to you, or does it not come to light other to you? Then consider it also in this way. On the one hand, is it not the case that equal stones and sticks sometimes appear to one person to be equal, but to another person they do not appear to be equal, although they are the same? Right, so what have we got here? Either seeing sticks or stones or some other things that are equal. From these we envision that which is other than these. Or does it come to light, does it not come to light other to you? Then consider it also in this way. On the one hand, is it not the case that equal stones and sticks sometimes appear to one person to be equal, but to another person they don't? Well, let's have this stick here. So then you have person A and you have person B. And they're looking at these sticks. And so you have person A says that C is equal to D, and person B says that C is not equal to D, even though they're looking at the same sticks. and it depends on their measure of precision. Of each person. Or it could depend on the appearance. They may, or depend on viewpoint, or appearance. But the point is that they're the same ones, and different people might have a different point of view about their equality. I'm still not sure what this equal thing is here. Perhaps I'm going to take a look at my other translation to see if it's clearer. Consider, he said, whether this is the case. We say that there is something that is equal. I do not mean a stick equal to a stick, or a stone to a stone, or anything of that kind, but something else beyond all these, the equal itself. Right, there is something equal, the equal itself. Let's take a look at how they put it here. To auto ison, the equal itself. Or the self equal. Okay, so we have the equal itself. Does that exist? And so here at 74b, where they say, by all means, or sorry, Socrates says, or do we also know that which self is, auto estin? In this other translation, and do we know what this is? What this is, meaning this, the equal itself. Where have we acquired knowledge of it? I think in this translation where there is use of auto or auton or derivatives of that, the word self is used. And that's useful in one way because you can see that any of these things can be referred to as selves. So the equal itself is a self. And what follows from that is quite interesting. But when you're reading it, sometimes it's difficult to keep track of what it means in plain English. But here we're talking about the equal itself as a concept that exists, and whether it would be equal is another question I have. Because here they say somewhere there is something that is equal. Is it saying equal to anything, or just that it is the equal itself? I do not mean a stick equal to a stick, nor a stone to stone, nor anything of that kind, but something other that is beyond all these, the equal itself, beyond all these. Beyond all particular equalities. Stick to stick, or stone to stone. The equal itself. Okay, so that's a special thing. And so moving on from there, where were we when you have people either seeing sticks sometimes appear to one person to be equal, but to another person they do not appear to be equal, although they are the same? Simmias, it is certainly the case. Socrates, what next? Have the equal things, I think, here, have the equal things ever appeared unequal to you? Let me just check my other translation. In this one it says, these equal things and the equal itself are therefore not the same. Right, so it's saying, well, these things that are equal, and here he said that sticks equal to sticks or stones equal to stones, this equality itself or the equal itself is beyond all of these. And so there is a difference between, so you have the equal itself weirdly is not equal to equal particular equal things. And for example, stick, stones, etc. Have these equal selves ever appeared unequal to you? Or has equality ever appeared to be inequality to you? Never indeed, O Socrates. Accordingly then, these equal things and the equal itself, or the equal self, or the self equal, are not the same, right? And that's what we had here. The equal itself is not the same to the particular equal things. In Simmias, in no way at all do they appear equal to me, O Socrates. Socrates. But it is definitely out of these equal things, although they are different from that equal itself, that you have nevertheless conceived and grasped the knowledge of it. Right, so I think that's the point. So here we have equal things. So let's do this time, let's do the apples again. So we have one apple, another apple, and when you see them, you think of them as being equal. However, and from your viewpoint here, you see this equality and you are reminded of the equal itself. This is a particular instance of equality. Although strictly these two apples won't be the same. That's the other point. They are not strictly the same. I think that's what he's getting at here. So let's have a look. Simmias, speak most truly. Socrates, is this not the case whether it is like them or unlike them? Right, in this translation it says, but it is definitely from the equal things, though they are different from that equal itself, that you have derived and grasped the knowledge of equality, whether it be like them or unlike them. So whether these, okay, so I think it's saying that here, this equal is how we got knowledge of that. So what's the relationship between this particular instance of equality and equality itself? Are they alike or are they unlike? And that could vary depending on how alike these are. For example, this apple could be said to be equal to this apple, even though it's twice as big, for example. And so they could be equal in the sense that they are apples, in which case this equal here would be different, would be more unlike the equal itself. So it depends on the particular instances of equality. How close are they to equality? So is this not the case whether it is like them or unlike them? So you still get the recollection, even if it's not necessarily like them, but something triggers that memory or that recollection. And therefore, then by all means, said Simmias, Socrates, then there is no difference indeed, as long as it is the case that from seeing one thing, one can bring to mind the other of the appearance or aspect, whether like or unlike, self-recollection has necessarily been brought to be. So that has happened, despite these being possibly unlike. Well, they will be unlike in some respect. Otherwise, it would be the thing itself. There will be some difference, put it that way. Otherwise, it would be the thing itself. By all means, then, said Simmias. Socrates. What next? In the case of equal sticks and the other objects which we just now mentioned, do we experience something like this about them? Do they accordingly appear to us to be equal in the same way, just as that which is self-equal? Or is there some inner deficiency compared to that nature, such as the equal? Or is there not an inner deficiency? There is indeed a considerable deficiency in the visible earthbound ones, said Simmias. Right, so this is this point here again. Are they alike or unlike? Is there a deficiency? Socrates, do we not agree then that whenever someone, on seeing something, they realize on the one hand that this thing which I now see wants to be like a certain real being, ton onton, a reality, but on the other hand, it is in need and cannot be such as that nature, since it is inferior? Is it not necessarily the case that the one who realizes this must have somewhere caught sight beforehand of that to which he says the thing itself is like, but deficiently so? Right. Okay. That's quite nice. So whenever someone on seeing something, they realize that on the one hand that this thing which I now see wants to be like a certain reality. So here, these equal apples, they want to be, this wants to be like the equal itself. That's why you've recollected the equal itself. But on the other hand, it is in need and cannot be such as that nature. So this equality here of a particular instance of equality cannot be like the equal itself. It will be deficient. It is in need and cannot be such as that nature, since it is inferior. This equality here is inferior to the equal itself. Is it not necessarily the case that the one who realizes this must have somewhere caught sight beforehand of that which he says the thing itself is like, but deficiently so? So this comes into mind. Are you learning this or recollecting it? Learning or recollection? But if you are able to see this, you must be comparing it to that equality itself, and therefore it must be a recollection. Otherwise, what are you comparing it to? Because this is not equality itself. These things aren't equal. Strictly speaking, they're not equal. They're either less equal in the sense that you're comparing a similar apple with a bigger apple, but they're equal in the sense that they're both green apples with red stems, or they're equal in the sense that they're more alike, like these other two apples. So you can have either this one or compare with this one. But in either case, you're never getting to the equal itself. They're never truly equal. But how would you have in mind this concept of equality if you had not seen or somehow held it itself? Where did you get to hold it? Or when did you get to behold this in order to make comparisons? Okay. Simmias. Necessarily. Socrates. What next? Have we also experienced such a thing as this in regards to the equal things and the equal itself, or have we not? Simmias. By all means, indeed, we have. Socrates. Accordingly, then, it is necessary that we knew the equal beforehand. This is that point here. We knew it beforehand. Prior to the time when we first saw the equal things and realized that all these things, on the one hand, reach out to be like the equal, but on the other hand, possess an inner deficiency. Simmias. That is so. Socrates. But surely we also agree to the following, that the self-realization cannot be realized in any other way, other than out of seeing or touching or out of some other sense perception. Thus I say that all these perceptions are identical. I'm not sure what that means. So surely we also agree to the following, that the self-realization cannot be realized in any other way, other than out of seeing or touching or some other sense perception. Thus I say that all these perceptions are identical. I'm not sure what it means there. Let me check the other translation. In this translation, it says, then surely we also agree that this conception of ours derives from seeing or touching or some other sense perception, and cannot come into our mind in any other way. For all these senses, I say, are the same. I don't know what he means by all these senses are the same, but so if you see equal objects, for example, these two squares, they are equal in one sense. Because they are both squares, so a small equal here. But are they, I mean, they are both squares, not strictly equal. But the point is, we are seeing them. And if we heard two musical notes, we'd hear them. So this is, it could be, it's a sense of them. It could be sight, could be hearing, etc. And it's through the senses, whichever of these are all the same. I think that's what it means. All the same. Through them you will never sense true equality. No matter what sense, whether you touch something similar to something else, smell something similar, see something, hear something, etc., they will never be equal in the strictly true sense. I think that's what is meant here. when it says, surely we also agree to the following, that the self-realization cannot be realized in any other way. So this realization of equality itself, it has to be made via the senses, no other way, because how can we experience things that are truly equal? Well, what about one and one? One equals one. We're not experiencing it, but they are equal in the mind. I wonder if that counts, or whether, what are you actually holding in the mind? Are they equal? Or you know that there must be something that is equal and you're trying to hold placeholders in your mind which you say are equal. But that's making it more complicated. Let's go back to the text. So all these perceptions are identical. Simmias, for it is the case that they are the same, O Socrates, by reason that the Logos wishes to make this clear indeed. And in this translation, then surely we also agree that this conception of ours derives from seeing or touching or some other sense perception, and cannot come into our mind in any other way, for all these senses, I say, are the same. They are the same, Socrates, at any rate in respect to that which our argument wishes to make plain. Right, so they are the same in the sense that this reasoning follows. In this reasoning here, whether you saw the squares or touched them or heard them, if that was possible, it would make the reasoning of the difference between this particular instance of equality and the equal itself, they're all the same in that respect. Okay. Socrates, but surely out of sense perceptions, on the one hand, we necessarily realize that it is inherent in all the things we perceive that they do indeed reach out to that self which is the equal, and that they are indeed, that they are in need or at a loss, or how shall we express it? Right, so here we realize that there is a deficiency. But it's these senses that brought us to this. Simmias, in that way, Socrates, accordingly then, before we began to see, to hear, and to perceive the other things, we must have somewhere happened to encounter, by grasping, knowledge of the equal itself, which in some way exists or is. If we are to refer out of our sense perceptions of equal things to that, and not realize that on the one hand, all of them are eager to be such as that nature, whereas on the other hand, they are inferior to that self, to their self. So it's saying that this grasping on knowledge must have preceded that. So let's try and represent that. So this is the equal itself. And you have knowledge of that first. Then you sense this second. And by sensing that, there is a link formed. And then you recollect third. One, two, three. Simmias. That necessarily follows from what has been said, O Socrates. Socrates. Is it not the case then that we saw and we heard and had the other perceptions immediately after we were born? Right, so where did we get knowledge of this? Because if we can only experience these and they're all from senses, so this is life, this is death. And here we have knowledge through senses. And therefore, if we have only knowledge through senses from when we're born, so this here is birth, this bit here is death, then where do we get the knowledge of the concepts themselves, such as equality? And I think it will point to here. Simmias, by all means indeed. Socrates, then we must say indeed that we must have grasped the knowledge of the equal before these perceptions. Simmias, yes. Socrates, accordingly then, as it is reasonable, we have necessarily grasped self-knowledge before we are born. Grasped this knowledge before we are born. Okay, as it is reasonable. Is it not the case then that if, on the one hand, having grasped this knowledge before our birth, by having been born with it, we knew both before being born and after having been born, not only the equal and the greater and lesser, but also all such beings? For our present reasoning is not any more about the equal than about the beauty of self and the good of self and of the just, and of the holy, and as I say about all those beings, to which we can stamp the seal, that which absolutely is. Well, yes, which one's more real out of these? Equality itself, and this is perception of equal things. Which is more real or true? And in that sense, it's saying not only have we got concepts themselves known, and this includes equality, there were others, beauty, justice, what other ones did he mention? Good, just, holy, etc. And he says that we can stamp the seal, that which absolutely is. These concepts themselves are reality. They are more real or true. That which absolutely is, to or esti, both when we are asking questions and in answering questions. The result being that we must have necessarily acquired the knowledge of them all before we were born. That is the case. And if on the one hand, and in each case, we have indeed grasped and not forgotten, then we must always be born knowing and have knowledge throughout our life. For to know is this, to maintain a grasp of knowledge and not to lose it. So to know is this, to maintain a grasp of knowledge and not to lose it. And this is, I think, where the grasp of knowledge came from, and to maintain it and not lose it through the cycle of life. Or do we not call the losing of knowledge this, forgetting, O Simmias? So losing it is known as forgetting. Most certainly, without a doubt, O Socrates. But if, on the other hand, I suspect, having indeed grasped it before birth, we lose it at birth, but then later on, by using our perceptions about them, we recovered the knowledge of those beings, those concepts, real concepts, which we also possessed at some time beforehand. Accordingly, then, would not that which we call learning be the recovery of innate knowledge? Then surely we would be speaking correctly if we would say this is recollection. By all means, indeed, said Simmias. Socrates, surely then, this was seen to be indeed possible, for when one perceives either by seeing or hearing, or in another way perceives something, by grasping something other, they realize that which they forget. From this thing which approaches this by likeness or unlikeness. So that, as I said, one of two is the case. Either we are indeed born with the knowledge of them, and all of us know throughout life, or afterwards, by which we call to learn, but rather this is nothing else than recollecting, and learning would thus be recollection. And so this is the bit where he says, which approaches this by likeness or unlikeness. It's the perception of equal things approach the quality itself. And here there can be a variation according to how like or unlike this particular instance is. But the same applies not only with equality, but with beauty or justice, that the perception of it can vary from the thing itself, from instance to instance, some being more alike, some being less alike, but the recollection is still made by seeing the instance of it, even though it is not exactly the same as the thing itself. I hope that makes sense. Simmias, and certainly it has to be in this way indeed, O Socrates. Socrates, therefore, which alternative do you choose, O Simmias, that we are either born with that knowledge, or that we later recollect the knowledge which we had previously grasped? Simmias, I cannot make a choice, O Socrates, at the present time. Right, so the question is, are we either born with that knowledge, or we later recollect the knowledge which we previously grasped? Right, so we have option A, which is born with knowledge of real concepts. And what I mean by those are justice, equality, beauty, itself. Born with knowledge of real concepts, or B, recollect knowledge of real concepts. Previously grasped. And Simmias can't choose between them. Socrates, then how about in the following way? Can you make a choice and say in what way it appears to you in the case of self, of it, of the choice, I guess? Would a person that has knowledge be able to give reasoning of that which they know or not? Would a person that has knowledge be able to give reasoning of that which they know or not? Right, so can you give reasoning of if you know it? If you know it, can you reason about these? Can you reason about, and here it's logos, be able to give donai, logon, a reasoning of that which they know or not. Simmias, certainly they must necessarily be able to do so, O Socrates. Socrates, and does it appear to you that everybody can give an account of those things themselves which we were mentioning just now? And here we have account is logon. So can everybody give an account of these? I only wish they could, but I very much fear that tomorrow, at this time, no longer, not even one man will be left who is also capable to do this in a worthy manner. Right, I think he's referring to Socrates' death there, so that tomorrow at this time, no longer, not even one man will be left who is also capable to do this in a worthy manner. Socrates, accordingly then, it does not appear to you that everybody knows these selves, these are all selves, in that they exist, just like we are selves and we exist. And that's why we call them justice itself, equality itself, beauty itself. They have a reality, truth to them. So does everybody know them? Can you reason about these? And what about everybody? And this implies no logos, no knowledge. So if you can't reason or give an account, then you don't have the knowledge of them. Right, so 76C, that's where I'll pick it up from next time. Thank you.